Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free. Good morrow, Otterites. This is episode 179. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
So, as we mentioned, the guys let me put this one on the schedule because we were looking for pop culture episodes. And so I threw this one on. This is 1971 in pop culture. And you may be saying, why that year?
Yeah, we did say that.
So
Yes. Repeatedly.
So the thing I find interesting about this year in particular is it seems like a lot of things are crossing paths here. There's still some leftover 60s optimism.
Yeah.
Because as we move farther into the 70s, it seems like disaster piles upon disaster. You know, the complete failure in Vietnam, Watergate,
Energy crisis.
You know,
Jimmy
Carter's one stacked on the next. But 71 is still this moment when, well, maybe Nixon's not super popular, but he's you know, cresting the wave. He's probably going to win the next election.
How little they knew.
There's still a little, again, this leftover kind of optimism of the Woodstock era and all that. But 1971 sees the beginning of the Manson family trial in Los Angeles.
There are a lot of negative things going on in the culture. So when we say pop culture, we usually talk about media.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think we could really broaden that. So we're talking about an entire year.
Right.
We should talk about literally what's going on in the culture. If that's all right with the captain here, whose idea this was.
Yes.
Because, there is the Manson trial, which captures the imagination and the
Yes, I mean, it was the original trial of the century.
Yes.
When you talk about even bigger than, say, the Scopes trial in the 30s or anything, this is a worldwide phenomenon with Manson and the girls and the family members that are not on trial outside, and the beginnings of global media and satellite news and all of this. And here's this perfect storm of here's this dude that's way out, who's not just murdered, but murdered a pregnant television actress.
Yes.
And didn't do it himself. They're trying to prove in court that he brainwashed other people into doing it in his name.
Right.
Which they were successful at.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unique and crazy moment.
Right. It is unique at the time because this would have been unthinkable it's so out of the blue that you wouldn't even have made this up at the time.
Right.
That's how out of the blue this is.
It's truly a truth is stranger than fiction type moment. It's just crazy. And at the same time this is all going on, you're turning the page on a lot of other 60s media. It's the last episode of The Ed Sullivan Show airs in 71. The first episode of All in the Family
I was going to say
airs in 71. We've talked about Norman Lear and All in the Family and the change in television going on at this time.
The change in movies as well. This is when everything goes from westerns and big screen kind of big fantasy or big
the big historical epics are gone.
Epics, that's the word I was
musicals
looking
are
for.
gone, and you're in this cinema verite era. This
it's got to be all real life. It's got to be gritty. It's got to be in
Dirty
the dirt.
Harry is 71.
Yeah.
Pretty soon you're going to have The French Connection and these other similar films that are supposed to be grounded in this very gritty realism.
Yeah. Honestly, we've talked about it before, but just to reiterate for listeners and new listeners, I'm sure we are picking up by the score every episode.
Sure.
A lot of what is 1970s culture in the media, at the very least, is due to rejection of what had gone before due to Vietnam.
Yes.
And its coverage. In the
so
face
much.
of what was going on in Vietnam, it's as though people could no longer handle the lighthearted.
Yeah.
We can't do that anymore.
Well, it was seen as being disingenuous. Because people, as Martin has said many times, you cannot sit with Gomer Pyle laughing and schmucking his way through 30 minutes every week when you're also seeing body bags come back from Vietnam.
Right. And Gomer never makes a single mention of Vietnam.
That's just the
never
obvious
once.
one. There are, so much of that was done, and people say,
Petticoat Junction and Green Acres and all this is gone, replaced with Maud and other,
we've talked about that too, about the rural disappearance or whatever the
purge.
Because
it was very
even though those shows that were purged were doing well,
very much so, yeah,
and yet all of a sudden they're gone. That strikes me as so incredible because usually TV execs are not making a change unless things are bad.
I mean they're usually very risk averse, and that was a risk move.
Very
jump these popular shows and do something that's not been done. Go after a younger demographic.
Well, it's not so much go after a younger demographic. I mean, it's that too, but it's also throwing away what's making you money on the chance that this new thing might make you money.
Well, I mean, but he read the cultural zeitgeist of the times. And that's the reason this is different from many other, because this thing would be followed several times over and over again when a network is really down in the dumps. They bring in a new guy. This is no different than corporations, and we're going to fix this. I mean, we're going through it right now. If you pay attention to the Warner Brothers Discovery purge, they brought in David Zaslav, and he's cutting things left and right. The Batgirl movie, it's finished. It's done. It's shelved.
They're still not. That's what amazes me.
Yeah.
If you finished it, throw it on there once at least, Well,
but you see, the tax write-off is of better benefit to them than if they released it.
You put it on HBO, not necessarily put it in the theaters.
Then you couldn't do it. That's what they're saying.
I find that hard to believe.
They would lose money even releasing it to stream it.
That's exactly right. That's why they did it.
Because supposedly,
that's what I mean. So you still get the tax write-off.
Yeah. Well, everybody that's involved with it says it's not, of course.
Yeah.
But Zaslav, and this is it's very similar because you talk about Dirty Harry. Clint Eastwood made movies for Warner Brothers Studios for 50 plus years, and this is right when he's really starting to do that in 71. Dirty Harry makes him a national known name, even though he was known before, but it takes him up another level. It takes him up to
because he's absolutely carrying.
That's right.
At least that initial film for sure.
Yes,
he's carrying it.
It becomes a franchise, which this is just the beginnings of franchise. James Bond does it the previous decade, but that's about it. And
that's a special case only because you're doing it on a series of books. This is a totally new property.
That's right. Yeah, it's
becoming a series
that is created on its own.
Yeah. And I mean, Planet of the Apes is the only even close that's like it.
That's right. That's exactly. And it's the same era. I mean, it's just a couple years earlier than that.
Exactly the same.
Clint Eastwood runs and has made movies, and he hasn't for many years appeared in a movie he didn't direct, because he's more of a director now than he is otherwise, and he is notorious and famous for one take, always on time, and always way under budget. So he works with whatever he's got, and he has made the studio a gazillion dollars worth of money. The movie he made most recently, I don't know if you guys saw it, but it was a very good movie, Cry Macho. It went, a lot of it went to streaming. Well, it tanked. It did not do well. It made like $3 or $4 million on a $30 million budget. And Zaslav said, "Why the hell? Who approved this?" And he's bringing his head, sort of thing. And they're saying, "But Clint Eastwood has been with us for 50 years, has made us money. He's part of the family." He says, "This is not family. This is a business." And that's kind of what we're talking about.
Very anti-Kantian utilitarian view of things.
Very much so. That's correct. And that's
which, when you think about it, that's legally businesses have to be run that way because they have a fiduciary responsibility.
That's why they brought in
entirely a utilitarian outlook.
That is exactly right, and that's what what Zaslav is doing now, and everything's on the chopping block because they've been running at a deficit for a long, long time and losing money out.
And since they don't have Marvel movies to keep them afloat,
the criticism has always been they've got all these wonderful DC properties. Why can't they monetize those?
Because DC itself doesn't even know what to do with its own properties.
Well, there's part of the
problem.
They
are just doing yet another universe-wide, multiverse-wide reboot in this whole Dark Crisis thing that is the current event for DC. Mm-hmm. And all they're doing is repackaging prior reboots now. they're not even coming up with new reboots. They're doing
It has been seriously
and Marvel's doing the same thing as far as events.
It has been seriously talked about, and to a degree that I am almost scared by, that Warner Brothers does not believe DC Comics, except as fodder for movies, can make them money in the long run.
Right. Well, that's why DC is now based in L.A.
That's right.
They moved from New York to L.A.
Other than Batman, and this is including Superman, mind you, other than Batman, they have no profitable properties at the current moment.
I would say there's a lot of reasons for that, but I don't want to get into those
we
reasons.
would. I will put it to you this way: all the reasons that I'm suspecting that you're going to name, Zaslav already knows, and that's what he's. He will either swing the bloody hatchet, or he may even shut the doors. Now that seems awful, but it could.
I find that hard to believe. Just because...
they will become the Batman publishing house.
Well, even so,
all these ancillary characters will go away.
See, yeah, well,
and that's
you're going to have to do an awful lot of work to keep the rights to those characters.
And therein lies the issue. That's right.
Because if you're not publishing at least one book, every so often, with each character, then they will become public domain.
And therein lies the issue, especially
now. It's a long time, granted,
right?
But it can happen.
Superman and Batman and perhaps Wonder Woman, but Wonder Woman's not popular either, despite the movies and the successes they've had.
Well, that second movie, that really screwed the pooch as far as because people realized, oh my God, she committed rape.
Oh, well, yeah, see,
and it was okay.
As we've always gone back to, it is always about the story.
Yes,
and so oftentimes that.
Well, the story
that
was good.
Yeah.
But the fact, again, I don't want to get off in 1971, but I mean, this is...
Because that's 1984.
Because that's 1984. The movie is 1984.
Yeah.
It was released, in 20 whatever. But the story was fine, but the vehicle of how some of that stuff happened was horribly bad. Even... It's just... By today's standards especially, it is bad.
Yeah. Because
she basically, her boyfriend took over somebody else's body, and then they had sex. I was like, holy crap, what happened to this guy's ability to say no?
That's exactly right, yes.
But that was okay, though, because, it's different.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Back to 1971.
I'd say totally new subject, but how about back to the original subject?
Now for something completely different.
Yes. So, again, there's these weird confluence of events in 1971.
Yes.
That also, it struck me when I realized how many, monster rock albums were released in 1971. And I'm going to give you some of these. At Fillmore East by the Allman Brothers. Master of Reality by Black Sabbath. American Pie, Don McLean. Pearl, Janis Joplin's final album after her death. Tapestry by Carole King.
Oh, that was huge.
Aqualung, Jethro Tull.
That's also huge.
And then some of the huge biggies, the absolute monsters. L.A. Woman by The Doors.
Their final album.
Yeah, hit their final album because Morrison dies in 71.
Right, January. Wasn't it very early?
No, summer.
Summer, okay.
July, he's found in the bathtub in Paris. Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones. Imagine by John Lennon. Led Zeppelin 4 by Led Zeppelin, and Who's Next by The Who. Now, just Led Zeppelin 4 and Who's Next are two of my favorite albums.
So, what are on those albums? Because
Well, Stairway to Heaven.
Okay.
Stairway to Heaven is Led Zeppelin 4. Who's Next is Won't Get Fooled Again, Behind Blue Eyes, Baba O'Reilly. I forget exactly Sticky Fingers, but that's right around the time where they're doing, the Honky Tonk Woman, that era of their stuff. Before Some Girls. And before Beast of Burden, that's a little later. That's 78. But Sticky Fingers was a huge seller. And of course, L.A. Woman is, a monster. So just think about, 5 of these monster foundational rock albums, all released in the same year, is just crazy to me. It's just stunning. Boom.
I guess I am less stunned just because, that's not my kind of music.
Well, it's
I recognize the cultural significance and the value of the music, but it's okay, fine.
It would go on to define a decade of music in many ways, because
a certain aspect of
Yeah,
music,
because it's been argued, and I'm not necessarily saying it's true or not, but I can see the argument that the 70s was the greatest era of rock and roll that's ever been recorded. It's been said that way.
I mean, as we discussed, it is the time when it's kind of hitting stride. The songwriter is firmly established.
That's correct. Yes,
and the bands are spreading their wings.
Because
so to
the Beatles, in many respects, changed everything when they realized not only can the act itself make money, it can make an ungodly amount of money.
And we can be in control of it.
That's right, and yet let them do their thing too, because they realized...
Well, but it took many years to get to that point where they could wrest control back from the...
Yes,
that is exactly right. Yeah, and the Beatles had a lot to do with that because they just made their own studio. You know, and that's when other albums and other artists are realizing, wait a minute, I don't have to do it the way my record label says and come out with this packaged bubblegum type of a look that the Beatles start out with. You know, they all dress the same, they got the haircut and all that stuff. Once they go away from that, then everybody, let's do our own thing. And, you know, Led Zeppelin's a great example because nobody's done anything like that before.
Yes.
And they're an enormous hit. And then you have so many others that said, well, maybe this is the era of writing your own stuff. The Beatles proved that because when they wrote their own stuff, they were awesome.
Yeah.
And the guitarists, in many respects. That's not something... Before, it was a package deal. You know, the music itself really didn't matter much because, let's face it, there's just not as much talent in many of them. But when you get somebody that's an absolute amazing talent, like Jimmy Page, for example, that's allowed to do his own thing, people responded to that. They were at that point by then.
Right. I mean,
they responded.
Yes. I mean, because this is
could have come earlier.
The starting out of not just Jimmy Page, but Clapton is huge. Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath is establishing this notion that rock is built around the guitar.
Hendrix.
And the guitarist. Hendrix is
absolutely.
monster.
That's correct, and that's new. Before
oddly enough, its own success, rock's own success, and we talked about this, killed itself.
Yeah.
Because all of that freedom that they had, ultimately, it dilutes the brand. Because we talked about, this type of rock over here is going to look at this type of rock, which we still call rock, and they're going to look at each other with total derision because that's not real rock.
Oh, yeah.
Which I find fascinating.
I mean, the heavy metal bands disdaining the hair bands and all of that.
Well, versus
the pop rock. Because, I mean, you when you get to the popularity of Journey in the mid-'80s,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a rock band, but is it?
I mean, I'm right there with you because, I mean, I love the jokes about, like, REO Speedwagon and calling them REO Retread. I mean, I love that. So, I mean, I'm very much there.
Any album, though, that has a quote from the Little Rascals on it has got to be good.
Well, I mean, don't kid yourself. High Infidelity sold a crap load of albums. I mean, and Journey's Escape in '84.
Yeah.
A crap load of albums.
Yeah.
And, again, just because it's popular doesn't mean it's bad. Just because it's popular doesn't mean it's good. But I'm just pointing out, though, that, it's a very large umbrella that is all due to stuff like this happening a decade earlier.
Very much so.
It's kind of like I said, just sowed the seeds of their own, not destruction, but as a genre,
dissolution, perhaps.
Dilution. Yeah.
And because rock can all of a sudden sustain a vastly different variety of approaches to it. Elton John, for example, very different from Lindsey Buckingham and Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks, which is also very different than Van Halen and all of these others that become monster acts.
But as you said, though, about the '70s being at its height, or maybe you said it, but
I did.
when I think of rock, '70s is the decade I think of.
That's right. It's exactly it. You can parlay a little bit into the late '60s. You could probably make some claim that Sgt. Pepper's Forward. I've said that before.
Well, I mean,
there's some truth to that. But
rock starts with Elvis. I mean, that's the accepted.
Well, or actually, Buddy Holly. I think Buddy Holly predates Elvis slightly, but they're contemporaries. Certainly.
But I mean, he's the king for a reason. Buddy Holly's not the king.
Well, yeah, and that's true. And of course, Buddy Holly's early death.
Yes,
there's a lot
and
of
Big Bopper and all that stuff being on the same plane.
Because they were even more. I think because of course Elvis was Southern too. They were very radical at the time. Both of those acts were.
Oh yeah, Elvis especially was, with those hips gyrating and driving the girls crazy.
Obscene.
Very obscene.
Yeah.
But it's all a progression from that point forward, and we still call it all rock. But when we think of rock and roll, not just rock music, it's the 70s.
It's the 70s. That's exactly right.
You think of hard rock, that's
it's Stairway.
Yeah.
I mean, the 70s revolves around Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
To a large degree.
Well, and to me,
if you want to put it to one song, well, I'll go with you on that one.
when I think of good music, period, it doesn't matter what it is. It's got to be more than just 3 or 4 notes repeated over and over. And this is the point where we've gone beyond that, because that's the 50s and much of the 60s.
That's right. It's very much
the
programmatic.
3 chords.
Yeah,
and the truth.
3 chords and an attitude.
Well, sometimes you don't even need the attitude, because it's just because it's all that bubblegum stuff.
But that's the best word I was going to think about, because you look back at the early 60s, pre-Beatles, and so many of those acts, whether they be...
Well, there's not a whole lot pre-Beatles when you get to the 60s, but...
Well, I mean, they were usually individual singers, like Leslie Gore, for example, and some of these... the Supremes, actually, they predate the Beatles.
Everly Brothers.
The Everly Brothers,
like
exactly.
Little Susie. That's a great example of the bubblegum kind
Little
of...
Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis.
That's right. That's trying to find it.
Well, I would argue Jerry Lee Lewis had his attitude.
Well, that's
It's mostly about underage girls, but that's another thing.
Yeah. I mean, and Little Richard had attitude. So,
So that's what you're trying to find that, but it's all still pretty much within this particular box of what the record companies want.
Yes.
What they think
There's only
people
so much
want.
they'll allow.
That's right, because they think they're cloning Elvis is what they're trying to do, and and then the Beatles come along and do something totally different, and then there was, oh crap, these British guys know what they're doing, and then you have the British invasion.
I don't know, really.
But
how different is it?
Well, that's
when they arrive. Because
how different is it? Yeah,
it's a bunch of young guys, clean cut relatively. Granted, they got the haircut.
Yeah, how different are they from Buddy Holly?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Not much, and they're even trimming Buddy Holly,
but they're British,
and
a little mystery. Yeah.
Yes, honestly, I think that British aspect helps them more than some of the other things. And when they show up, they aren't that different than the other acts that have gone before them.
Yeah,
but they're young, good-looking. Ringo aside, well, he's got that nose, But they're young, relatively good-looking guys, and they seem like they're clean cut. The first movie, the black and white,
Hard Day's Night.
Yeah, Hard Day's Night. Thank you. It's kind of goofy and it's non-threatening.
Yeah.
So in many ways, they are not that different from what has gone before, except for the fact they've got those accents.
And they were exotic enough that they were able to be replicated, because the early Rolling Stones are an attempt to copy that.
The Rolling Stones came over pretty much looking the same way.
As part of that was.
It's hard to think of it, but yes, Mick Jagger wore a suit with a thin tie.
British Invasion. You got Herman's Hermits and all those other the Animals. I mean, my lord, we could go on and on. The Zombies. They're all trying to cash in on that.
Right.
And then something happens that I'm not sure any of us can put our fingers on, but somewhere
along the way,
and I still mark it as Sgt. Pepper's, because that's when, well, at least that's when it's obvious, because that's when they changed.
Obvious there because they've got the control to do that.
That's right, and yet they had to get there.
It changed before. I think before it got there.
Rubber Soul and Revolver, I think, are that time period where they we still look the way we did. Yeah.
But anyways,
we're writing our own stuff.
Yeah, we're still dancing around 71.
Yeah, but this is the milieu, to use that marvelous word, that birthed what came out in 71. Not just 71, others, but
But again, it marks a point where what they've been doing has been building to, and 71 is this incredible crest. Again.
I don't think it's crest or not, but it's certainly it's way at the top of the parabolic orbit.
Right,
that's correct. Yeah, and not to denigrate 72 or 73 or even 74. Those early 70s, they're all full of that. You got a period of maybe about 5 years,
but a lot of that is overshadowed by the disastrous events that happens each year after that.
That is exactly right, and it doesn't take you long before 1976 is here, and it's disco.
Yes,
and that's when things change differently. That doesn't take away all that good rock and roll, because late 70s stuff, much of that is just as good as the others. But that they didn't compete with that here. This was pure.
Well, and what about the late 70s? Of course, Bonzo's dead. John Bonham, Keith Moon's dead. You know, the trauma of these bands is starting to take hold.
But then you've got other younger bands and newer bands.
The Eagles are
the Eagles. You know, they
hitting
come
a
right
peak again. We know Fleetwood Mac hits a peak and stuff. I just find 1971 is this interesting spot of turning the page. We've for sure closed on the whole Woodstock hippie thing because the end result is now on trial in Los Angeles with a swastika carved in his forehead. All his amazing music, and then what comes after is just disaster after disaster.
Well,
after
disaster.
disaster.
You say 71 is a turning of a page, but honestly, I think it's the last page before you turn the page.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because if you say 71 is the turning of the page, well, then 72 is turning another page.
Yeah, I like that. It's the last page of a good chapter, and what comes after is really bad.
Well, I mean,
it's those themes are continued throughout the rest of the decade.
Yeah,
but there's so much other stuff going on.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it in the show prep, or actually, it wasn't even show prep. It was before we, I think it was lunch, or I don't know when it was, but when we were talking about it earlier, there's so much that happens. There's the 72 Olympics, the Munich massacre.
Yes.
Oh,
another disaster for 72.
Well, it's also an election year, and it's when.
Well, I was trying not to categorize Nixon as a disaster.
Well, I mean,
it's the Watergate
break-in was not.
But right, but the fallout of that is in 73.
Yeah,
that's right.
So the break-in happened summer of 72. September of 72 is the Olympics.
Yes.
And then fallout, the trials, and all that coming out of Watergate at 73. The
oil shock in 74.
Yeah, the U.S. pullout.
Vietnam.
Vietnam is not the
73.
73 is the peace accord. Where we're supposed to stop, any offensive action. 75 is the final pullout.
Which was absolutely the death knell of American exceptionalism for its time. Because
and many of us could not handle that.
I mean, it was Afghanistan, only smaller in many ways. Afghanistan actually was worse.
Well, I mean, there's a prophecy in 1971 that you all know, because that's the year George C. Scott won the Oscar for Best Actor of Patton. Yeah. And of course, we remember that famous line during his speech at the very beginning. That's why Americans have never lost and will never lose a war. Which, of course, was Franklin J. Schaffner's way of kind of saying, come on, boys, we've done this before, let's go take them. This is not that far different from John Wayne's Green Berets of just a year or two earlier. And Scott rejected that. He didn't even want to say that line, but he did it anyway because he's a professional. And it's almost like it's a death knell.
He refused the Oscar.
Correct, absolutely. And that's very famously. At this point,
why? I don't remember his reasoning.
Unlike Marlon Brando, who decided, of course, he was Brando and he's weird. And he's made he sends in Sacheen Littlefeather. This is in '74 to speak about the injustices performed against the Native American people. When it comes to Scott, he just didn't think they should compete against each other.
Yeah, he didn't like the competition.
He thought it was awful.
He viewed the Oscars as a meat parade.
That's what he called it. He said it was phony.
How a very Patton-esque way to describe it.
Because we shouldn't be competing against each other in art this way.
Yeah, he was so a consummate professional.
The Oscars really are a Hollywood circle jerk.
And he recognized that, and he says, "No, I'm an actor. I want to act. Thank you, but no thanks. This is faux. This is manufactured. This is just as much a show as anything else."
We're dislocating our shoulders to pat ourselves on the back.
I wonder if he would have accepted a People's Choice Award.
Good question. Maybe.
Although I've never voted on one of those, so I don't know how the people actually choose.
Yeah. So let's take a quick bourbon break.
How's the time already? Wow.
Discuss 1971.
Yes.
So
even though we probably discussed other things more than 1971.
Well, that's kind of the way this works. It's what it is.
Oh crap! I'm out.
You're out.
I'm out. Oh well.
Oh, you want some more? Where's the bottle, Mr. Howard?
No, that's all right. I will just talk about what we've done.
So I poured one last little snort with lots of ice of the Yellowstone. Again, the super duper distilled and aged in Kentucky. That's the only way to do it.
That's right.
that kind of that good 90 proof. It's right about in the right spot. It's in a good proof sweet spot.
It is. No pun intended.
Mm.
Yeah, that Yellowstone is very much a surprise. I really do like that.
Oh, so mellow.
Especially for a $30 bottle of bourbon. I mean, that's good.
I know. Yeah. If you asked me which one of my favorites, it's definitely of that. Yes.
So, Robert, you said you hadn't poured anything, but
No, I hadn't poured anything, but like I said, I did very much like the Yellowstone. It is very good. Unlike again, I didn't not like the Wild Turkey, the 101 that we had earlier, the first episode that we recorded today, but it just wasn't nearly as smooth. And more as we try more and more bourbons, I'm finding that my preference is for the super smooth, for the ones where that. Like the Old Forester and the other, what was the other Wild Turkey that we did? Just the basic, was it?
Yeah,
just the basic. Yeah,
Straight grain
Wild
Wild Turkey. That's right.
both of those that we've done, the basic Wild Turkey and the basic Old Forester, and the 100 signature. All of those have that just kind of like an explosion of flavor in your mouth that I'm really liking. To me, that's what I'm looking for. Doesn't necessarily have to be sharp, although I like a sharp one every once in a while. But my preference is for those smoother ones that just have that explosion of flavor in my mouth. That's just good.
Francis, any follow-on comments?
No, I like the Wild Turkey 101 a lot, but it's the proof once you get above 100, I'm not as much of a fan. It gives me a headache very quickly.
Yeah,
I want to stick around that 80 to 90 is kind of my
yeah, I
sweet
think
spot.
so too. Yeah. If you
Yellowstone
have 100
hits that just right.
Yeah, that's the 100 proof and above. That's why they, even the big time aficionados will tell you that's when you really should do ice and a little bit of water to help dilute it because it is powerful.
It's more powerful than it was. It just is. Yeah.
Yeah, but still good. And one of the reasons why I don't mind not having one right now is I got to drive when I leave here, and I got farther to go than you guys.
Yeah, I may end up sacking out here for a little bit on Francis's couch for a bit.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll just let Oliver come up here and sit with me and hang out.
If that just blows your skirt up, knock yourself out.
He's a good boy. He's a good boy.
When he is quiet, he is wonderful.
So you subscribe to the seen but not heard.
Oh, you betcha, absolutely.
Is that true for children as well as dogs, or just dogs?
No, it's pretty much dogs. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I thought you were saying, it's pretty much all of them.
No. I don't. But I don't have any kids that are that small anymore. And I guess if you ask me again if I do, and I might say I have a different answer, but no.
Well, you never know.
Yes.
Well, any new little ones that come into your life would tend to be grandchildren.
I would think,
And
yeah.
those would be the kinds like, they can scream all they want because they're going back to mom's.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I've been hanging out with Francis's new little dog, or not super new. He's been around another recording session here.
Oh, coming up on a year.
Yeah. Little Oliver. He's a little kind of Spitz style dog, little itty bitty dude. A great big fluff ball that sends hair in every direction. But he's awful sweet, and I've been feeding.
He's not a big dog, but the fluff compared to dog is probably a pretty big ratio.
Yes. The ratio of dog to fluff is probably about 50-50.
Yeah.
So, but he's a good boy, and I've been giving him treats all day, and Francis has just been kind of avoiding him.
So pretty much the norm.
Yeah.
It's something like that. Yeah.
I should come over. I'll have to make sure Samantha brings Nemo over, and we'll let Nemo give you the wet willies.
Oh, good God, no! Heaven forbid.
So there we go. We like to have our canine buddies make appearances.
We do
on the show, and so Oliver is getting his mention today.
So back to 1971.
Yes.
So we've talked a lot about music. So
Yes.
what else is going on culturally? Because we want to talk about the culture in general. Pop
Right.
culture.
Again, so Norman Lear is taking hold of TV by the throat.
Yes.
And not letting up. Again, all the rural shows are gone. Ed Sullivan's now gone. Variety shows are kind of breathing their last. Although I think the Sunday
Red
Share...
Skelton might still.
Red
Yeah.
Skelton
is still around.
Carol Burnett.
Bonanza is still here, but not for much longer.
Yeah, Gunsmoke would
is still
be
here, but
it
not
would
for
also
much
be
longer.
kind of headed to the ash bin. But I mean, the variety show is still around. I think Johnny Cash's show still comes about. Sonny and Cher's.
Oh well, Sonny Cher was huge. It was a huge.
So
for
those are
early
still
years.
coming.
Yeah, there are probably more than we think. It's probably less because it really. I don't think you see the true end of the variety shows until later on in the decade when Carol Burnett and Sonny and Cher pretty much are done.
Yeah.
But all that stuff comes back. Masked Singer and all this other BS stuff. That's variety shows again.
It's just
a different style.
A competition format of the variety show.
Yeah.
Rather than hosted by someone that's kind of
with
a
a
star.
variety of acts
Right, yeah.
or skits like Carol Burnett.
Yeah.
It's there are around for a while. It's just a few big ones.
Yeah.
Just not a whole lot of them.
Yeah, the Big Dog Daddy though with Ed Sullivan.
Yeah, that was the granddaddy.
Last episode. And again, we talked a little bit about the emergence of the cinema verite and the gritty new filmmaking, the historical
Gritty new television too. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole Norman Lear thing.
Yeah. So the historical epic is gone. The musical is kind of gone.
Yep.
Nobody's lining up to make
Again, it's
Sound of Music again.
Nobody wants that lighthearted stuff, it seems, or at least that's not what they're willing to put on television. So, entertainment shapes the culture as well as the culture shaping entertainment.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other; they go hand in hand. This one feeds that, and then in turn feeds back the other way. And it's very rare that one does the other entirely.
Right. So, again, you're seeing Dirty Harry, which is going to lead to...
Well, 2 more sequels in that decade.
Yeah, 2 more sequels in that decade.
Yeah.
Plus John Wayne making cop movies.
Well,
Yeah,
McHugh
which
and
is
Brannigan.
just to me just weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's not in a cowboy outfit or a military uniform, it just seems wrong. Him in a suit just seems like, you going to a party somewhere? What's going on? I don't understand this. Where's the horse? But it does start this entirely new trend, and we've talked about a lot of the results of these new trends that started at the beginning of the 1970s. We talk about the cop shows and the detective shows that like James Garner in
Rockford Files.
Rockford Files and all of the other things that come up. And yes, movies like The French Connection is one.
It's also a 1971 film as well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So to think that The French Connection and Dirty Harry are both out in 1971, you really see a page turn then, or a whole new idea of what a movie should be.
Yes, that is a page turn in my opinion. Yeah, I would definitely
because
call it,
again the set aside the historical epic. That's all
right,
gone.
because it is truly a break from the past.
Yeah, the only other thing going then is drive-in movies and science fiction.
Yes.
Most all the other genres are dead.
Well,
Nobody
yeah,
wants to
well,
There's
invest
not
in
even a
it.
whole lot of science fiction going on.
I was
at
going
the
to say,
time.
yeah, because that was often an expensive proposition that they would get.
But just Planet of the Apes.
Westerns are almost done. I mean, John Wayne will still make some. Clint Eastwood will make just a handful, but that's about it.
Well, again, those are expensive to make, and it kind of goes part and parcel with the 70s. We always think of the 70s as a time when you can't afford anything for whatever reason, and maybe
Inflation is huge.
well, inflation is later though.
Well, not that much. I mean, you're talking about
Not 1971.
No, not 71. No, but you're talking about by 73 and 74. It's a big deal. I mean, the whip
Yeah.
inflation now buttons with Ford.
Yes, but it gets better for a little bit, but then gets worse again by the time Jimmy Carter comes along during his presidency. So yeah, inflation is a big deal during the 70s. It's almost like 1971 is the last gasp and grasp of the culture at having a good time
really,
before things get
really bad. Yeah,
kind of sucky for the rest of the decade. And that's not to say that there aren't highs in the rest of the decade, because you've got, from a musical perspective, for me this is a good thing, the emergence of punk and new wave music, and you've got some other great things. I mean, most people are going to denigrate disco, but people who are alive back then, they were listening to it secretly, unless they were the real big deadheads.
That's right, yeah,
And
because
the Dreaders in
it was
Detroit.
a-
Detroit
it was a
rockers
big
engaged
thing.
in the abolition of disco. My brother still has his Dread card.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Really.
Detroit rockers engaged in the abolition of disco.
Oh.
WRIF 101, the Riff. They're the ones who were putting that out.
Yeah, they come up with a lot of.
So you got a lot of stuff that is going on that is still good stuff, but it just you got the Kent State shootings in the 70s.
That's right.
You've got the hostages in Iran. You've got just so much negative stuff that is happening. It's like body blow after body blow, and 71 just seems to be that last year before it really just starts
Yeah.
that cultural downslide.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I find it fascinating for that reason, and again, these monumental cultural achievements in popular entertainment. To think how influential a film Dirty Harry is. The French Connection, again, thought of as one of the greatest American films of all time. And in all these great record albums, it's just, wow, this is just this stunning intersection of so many things before so much of what we remember the 70s for, all turns to crap. And then the cherry in the sundae on top of all of it is the insanity of the Manson trial.
Right.
So,
Which is actually, it is pretty early in because starts in early 71, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's convicted by April.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
yeah.
it lasts several months.
But
of course, the killings are in '69.
Right.
It
It really does capture the attention of the country. I mean, very quickly there's a movie made. And I tell you what, that movie saw reruns on television constantly, year after year. I mean, it wasn't just a year of the trial and whenever that movie first came out.
Yeah.
It made the television rounds like clockwork. It was like, every year around Easter you're going to watch Wizard of Oz. Same kind of thing. It would make its rounds for quite some time.
I mean, and Manson became a byword for the incomprehensible.
Yes.
That for an insanity that is
Helter Skelter.
is not imaginable. And I think that's one of our upcoming episodes. We'll go into that some more with the trial and the crimes.
Well, I mean, when at the very first line of U2's "Rattle and Hum" from 1988, the first song is "Helter Skelter." And Bono gets on the line, and it's a live performance. He says, "This is a song Charles Manson stole from the Beatles. We're stealing it back."
Yeah, well, Susan the Banshee stole it back before they
Yeah.
did.
All right.
Honestly, I like Susie's version better than both the Beatles and.
I'm pretty attached to the Bono version. I really am.
Well, the reason I like the Susie and the Banshees version, it's more energetic than either of the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And a song that is called "Helter Skelter" should be energetic.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Motley Crue covered it as well.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things a lot of people have covered. Yeah,
So
I imagine theirs is pretty energetic as well.
yeah.
71. The more you think about it, even though I was 5, you were 5, he was 6.
Yeah.
Francis was, because he's the old man in the group.
That's exactly right. I turned 6. You all turned 5. So
Yeah, well, yes.
Much-
yes, you were 5 most of the year.
that's right.
true.
Exactly.
And, I was 4 half the year, you were 4 for most of the year. So, yeah. So, yeah, you would have been, even not even in first grade yet.
Oh no. I'm
Not at the beginning of the year. Not at the beginning of the year. 1971 saw the return to the moon after the Apollo 13 accident.
Yeah.
So that was again.
So the Apollo program is ongoing.
Yes. So
as
14
well.
and 15. I don't know if 16 happened in 71 or not, but might have been 72. But we had two more moon landings. So again, things are riding high. Manson aside, for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's just So
That's a good observation. I don't think many people would have come up with that. You came up with that one all on your own?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, certainly, if you hadn't, I would not think less of you. Well, maybe I'd think a little less of you, but not much.
No.
I mean, I think, hit the internet somewhere, mentioned about some of these rock albums in
Right.
'71, and then
Well,
realized
that's your trigger to think, wow, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal, especially to think Sticky Fingers, L.A. Woman, Led Zeppelin 4, and Who's Next? 'Cause I'm not a huge John Lennon fan, but I recognize the enormity of the Imagine album.
Yeah.
So when you think about, I have like all 4 of those records, on CD. It's like, wow, they're all from 70. Yeah, that's right. They're all from 71. And wow, 71 is Manson goes on trial, which is a huge cultural phenomenon.
Muhammad Ali beats the snot out of Joe Frazier.
Joe Frazier.
That's right.
And then
Is
again,
that the Thriller in Manila?
No.
Yeah, no. This
that
is
comes
later.
later. That's later.
That's right.
This is Madison Square Garden.
That's right.
Um,
Whoop up on him.
And then when you tumble onto, wow, okay, Dirty Harry's 71, and there's some other great movies from 71, and
And lots of forgettable ones too. No, that's not,
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
yeah.
every year has forgettable movies. And
yeah,
yes.
but I mean,
But I found all of that very fascinating, and started kind of ruminating on this whole idea of how interesting 71 is, and then again you tack on to it that 72 becomes Watergate break-in, Munich massacre, 73 becomes all the Watergate hearings and trials, 74 is a resignation, 73 is the stopping Vietnam, the 75 the final pullout from Hanoi, Ford's big disaster, pardoning Nixon and everything. It's like,
Well, that was never not going to happen, though.
yeah, but it's just like kind of one thing after the next after the next. These body blows for the American psyche.
Right, which is why
It's so
younger people today who do not have memories of it, they just will never understand the cultural significance of Ronald Reagan to guys like us.
Yeah. Well, and they think everything's a disaster.
Well,
That
yeah.
everything's like the worst thing that ever happened. It's like,
Right, because they weren't around to
they
do
were
it better.
like, dude, come on. So,
Yeah, not everything. Yeah. Let's not even go there. We can spend episode after episode going there, and I don't
Yeah.
want to.
doggone it, you kids, we walked uphill to school both ways
In the snow.
in the snow.
And when you lived in the dorms at Bellarmine, that's true, literally.
but that's right. That's very true. That's right.
That's right. That's why I told Samantha, the middle spawn, that's what she would be able to tell her children one day. She walked through the snow, uphill, in the rain, both ways.
Both ways.
To get to school.
At the
And it was
class.
college, but still.
All
It
right.
counts.
So, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up this
Yes,
episode.
sir.
Francis, my buddy, what is next? Time.
Well, again, Martin seems to have hijacked everything because we talked a little bit about the Manson stuff. He wants to talk more about the Manson stuff. So next week we're going to talk more about the Manson stuff, the Helter Skelter, this cultural touchstone of the early 70s that Martin, just like a terrier, just cannot seem to let go. So we're going to go a little bit deeper with what the heck happened and what it means for our culture, because it certainly does, even today.
Yes.
So be here next week.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes published every Friday at noon Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a comment or review because that helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next week, same snake time, same otter channel.